Hi guys, I'm Tamara, the Food Director at Woolworths Fresh Magazine, and if you ever wondered how to get the kind of gnocchi that you get in restaurants, the kind that's super soft, little pillows of goodness, well, today I've got a secret for you. I'm going to show you just how to make that at home. So clean hands. Okay, so the ingredients that you're going to need for this super simple recipe, well, there's only 3 of them. How easy is that? So we've got some red skinned potatoes, about a cup of flour plus extra for dusting, an egg, and then I'm going to show you how to make a simple sauce as well. So we've got some butter, some sage, and also to finish some parmesan. Okay, let's talk about the potatoes, the most important part. So I'm using a red skinned potato. You can see it's got a thin skin and it's got creamy yellow flesh inside. It's both waxy and floury, so it's going to give us a light texture but still hold its shape while we're boiling it. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a large deep pot, and all I'm going to do is pop the whole potatoes into the pot and cover them with cold water. Then we're going to pop them onto the stove. All right, so I'm salting the water as well. And the reason why we boil those potatoes with the skin on is it really, provides us a protective outer layer that means that the water isn't going to seep through the flesh and make our gnocchi soggy. No one wants that. The reason why you start cooking the potatoes covered in cold water is so that they cook more evenly. So probably the biggest question you have about gnocchi is how do you say it? Is it gnocchi, gnocchi, gnocchi? Look, I don't know. I say gnocchi. I feel like that's a bit of a bougie way. So the cook time will depend on the size of your potatoes. So these are actually ready. They can be easily pierced with a fork, so it's time to get into it. Okay, so the potatoes are done, so I've got a clean work surface. So I'm gonna grab my 1 cup of flour, put that into a small sieve, and I'm gonna lightly flour this bench top. This is a ricer, if you haven't seen one before. A little bit of a fancy bit of equipment, but essentially it's kind of like a giant garlic crusher. If you don't have one of these, just wait for the potatoes to be cool enough to handle and then just grate them. You're gonna kind of get the same effect. Now you need a bit of muscle strength here. We want to distribute that potato evenly over that floured surface. We don't want to pile it up all together because see that steam escaping? That's going to help us with the texture of our gnocchi. And I don't actually peel them before I do this because you can see the peels just stay in there. So you can see those beautiful soft strands of potato. They're really fine, which is going to help us get a really consistent fluffy texture through our gnocchi. Last one, and my arms are killing me. It's a little bit of an arm workout for you. All right, so I'm gonna try my hardest to keep clean while I'm doing all of this. So potato is rice, it's on the floured bench. So all I'm gonna do now is crack my 1 egg and then just give that a little whisk with a fork. And now all I'm gonna do is just pour that straight over the top of the potato. So I've had a little spill there, but that's okay. This might get a little bit messy, but it's so much fun, so it's worth it. Okay, I'm gonna add a little pinch of salt. Very important, always salt your food. Now I've still got that flour, that 1 cup that I had put in there earlier. So I'm just gonna give that a little sprinkle over the top. All right, so you do wanna add the flour in a few additions, so that's enough for now. We're gonna give it a rough mix. I'm actually using a pastry scraper, but at this point you actually can just get your hands straight in there and get dirty, so. All I'm gonna do is do kind of like a chopping motion with this. This is gonna be really hard to keep clean today. All right, so it's really important that you mix this as little as possible. So you can see I haven't even used all of that flour yet, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more. The goal is to use as little flour as possible. That means that you're gonna get lighter, fluffier gnocchi. And you can see even when I'm pressing this gnocchi, it's really gentle. It's my little baby here. You don't wanna go smacking it down or like putting your whole body weight into it. You really have to go by feel for this recipe. So if 1 cup of flour is used and it's still a little bit sticky, then just grab a bit more, sieve that over the top, and then just keep gently kneading that in. It's getting there. See how I'm just gently folding that over? So just grab one side, pull it to the top, and then just give it a gentle push. And then just work your way all the way around. So just give it a little spin. It was also really important to use the potatoes while they're still hot. I find that it incorporates with the flour and the egg a lot nicer. Really happy with how that's turned out. So you can see, I know that it's ready because when I give it a little push, see how soft that is? Like a pillow. It's so nice. But it's also not sticking to my hands. So now it's time to roll it out. I've got a little bit of extra flour. I'm just dusting that clean work surface. Bring in your dough. And now I'm just gonna portion it. Okay, I'm gonna cut it into maybe like 4 pieces. Now just set some of those aside. This is actually my favorite part. This is really fun. If you've ever missed like playing with Play-Doh as a kid, you'll be into this. So you can just see I'm using my fingers spread apart, and see how I just splay them out as I roll into the gnocchi. So you can make these whatever size you like. I'm probably gonna aim to make them like 2 centimeters in diameter. And actually this is a little bit long, so I might chop this in half. Okay, so this one's done. Just push it to the side, roll it to the side, and then bring in your next one. That was a little slow demonstration. Now let's just speed things up a bit. I'm actually really quite pleased with how this is turning out. Almost done. Okay, so we are all done, so it's time to get cutting. I'm gonna cut these into about 1.5 centimeter pieces. So I'm just gonna use my pastry scraper, like my bench scraper again, or you can just use a small sharp knife, whatever you have. The bench scraper is pretty handy to use because then you can just pick them up like that and then just put them onto a sheet of baking paper. Just have this nearby because then we're going to use it later to help us transfer it to the boiling water. You can freeze gnocchi once they're shaped. Just arrange them onto a lined baking tray and freeze for about 3 hours or until they're solid. Then transfer to an airtight container and you can just cook them from frozen. Another tip is you can just roll that log of dough straight onto there and then just cut it straight onto the baking paper. So my gnocchi are all done. And now, as an extra step, this is completely optional, but if you want to be a little bit fancy, just get a fork, dip it in some flour, and then you're just going to roll these off the back of the fork to give them some little ridge lines. Okay, so I've got a large pot of water on to boil. You know how I feel about salt in water when we're cooking pasta. It's the same with gnocchi, so heavily salted, as salty as the ocean. Okay, and I've got another just deep saucepan here. Frying pan, I should say. I'm just gonna turn that on and I'm gonna add a little bit of butter. Okay, so my pot is actually on a low heat. I don't want it to turn too quickly. I don't want it to get away from me, but what we're looking for is it to ultimately be like a beautiful nut brown color. So I'm gonna add the sage leaves now so they can start to crisp up before we get to that point. Okay, so the butter has started to turn that beautiful nut brown color, but it's not too dark yet, so that's perfect. I've turned it off. Now it's time to add the gnocchi to the boiling water. Okay, so I'm using that baking paper that we had before to help me transfer that into the pan. Just be really careful when you do that. See, I've just slid it in. Now just give that a little stir. So start on the surface of the water and then just carefully move that around so that we're not squashing any of them. So you can start to see that they're beginning to rise to the surface. So once they've been at the surface for maybe like 30 seconds, they're ready to take out of the pan. I've just put that pan back on the heat and now I'm gonna scoop these out. Don't use a colander, don't strain them. That's a little bit too rough for these little babies. So just a slotted spoon, shake it out so it gets into an even layer on the bottom of the pan. Because then we wanna brown that and then give it another toss and then do the other side. So that really only took about like a minute of boiling in the pan before we added it into this. So you can smell it, you can hear it. Well, I can smell it. Smells delicious. You can see, look at those little burnt golden bottoms. They look yum. Check it out. So you can see that I'm actually using the pan to move the gnocchi around, not a spoon. Because these are so light and fluffy, even the stir of a spoon might break them up. We don't want that before we serve it. Ah! I told you it was messy. So I'm gonna season with some cracked black pepper. So you can see it's got a delicious crust on there, beautiful and golden. I can smell the sage and that, pepper that I added at the last minute too. This is ready to serve. I'm just gonna bring over that beautiful gnocchi. I'm just gonna scoop some of that into the bowl. This smells so good. I wish you could smell this through the camera. Okay, and Parmesan cheese, of course. It's so simple. Like, how easy is that? 3 ingredients, 2 ingredient sauce. So good. Oh, The crust on the outside is just so delicious, but it's still soft, pillowy, tender on the inside. Ooh. For more recipe inspiration just like this one, head online, grab your latest issue of Fresh magazine, or check out my other videos.